Welcome, friends. Tonight's story will touch your heart. Every night, just before closing, a quiet man would walk into the small coffee shop. The lights were dim, the air smelled of roasted beans, and the same soft song played from the old radio. He always sat in the corner by the window, the same seat, the same time. "Welcome, sir," she'd say with her gentle smile, handing him his usual cup. He never spoke much, just nodded with a polite thank you. To her, he was just another late customer. But his eyes, they carried stories of a heart that once loved and lost. One cold evening, as rain tapped softly on the glass, she noticed his hands trembling. "Rough day?" she asked kindly. He looked up, his eyes tired but warm. "Some days never end," he whispered. "But this coffee makes it easier." She smiled without knowing. That smile was the only warmth he had left in his lonely world. She had no idea who he really was. The man she served every night was the CEO of one of the biggest companies in the city. A millionaire, a leader, but a broken father, raising his little girl alone after losing his wife. The world saw power and success, but she saw the human behind it. One night, she found a small envelope on the counter. Inside was a letter. "Thank you for reminding me what kindness feels like. You never knew who I was, and that's why your smile meant the most." The man who just came for coffee. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she read it. The next morning, news broke out. The lonely CEO donates millions to help single mothers. And when she saw his picture in the newspaper, holding his daughter and smiling for the first time in years, she gasped. It was him, the quiet man from her café. That night, she made 2 cups of coffee and placed one at his usual table, whispering softly, "Come back any time." If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. You're watching Soul of Kindness, where every story reminds you that compassion still exists in this world. Tonight, we continue the emotional story of he came every night just for coffee. She had no idea he was the lonely CEO, millionaire, single dad. The next evening, the cafe felt strangely quiet without him. She kept glancing at the door, pretending to wipe the counter again and again. Every sound of the bell made her heart skip, but it was never him. Days passed. Then one night, as snow began to fall outside, the door slowly opened. And there he was. Same black coat, same soft eyes, but this time he wasn't alone. A little girl stood beside him, holding his hand. She had the same ocean blue eyes and an innocent smile that could melt the coldest heart. "Daddy, is this the lady who makes your favorite coffee?" the girl asked. The barista froze. She couldn't speak for a moment. "Yes, sweetheart," he said softly. "This is her." The little girl walked up to the counter, pulled something from her small backpack, a handmade card with tiny hearts, drawn in crayon, and handed it to her. "Thank you for being kind to my daddy," she said. Her eyes filled with tears. Inside the card were just 5 words, written in a child's handwriting. "Thank you for his smile." He looked at her quietly, his voice breaking as he said, "I told her about you. How you reminded me what it feels like to be human again." The barista wiped her tears and smiled through the ache in her chest. "You both deserve happiness," she whispered. The little girl giggled. "Daddy says you make the best coffee in the world. Can we come every night?" For the first time, the man truly smiled. Not the polite kind, but a real one, deep from the heart. "Every night," he promised. And so they sat together, father, daughter, and the woman who unknowingly healed their broken hearts. As snow painted the world white outside, the warmth inside that tiny cafe was stronger than ever before. It had been 3 months since that snowy evening. The cafe had become their little world, a place of laughter, warmth and quiet healing. Every night, the little girl would draw on napkins while her father watched her, and the barista, now their friend, would serve them both with a smile that came straight from the heart. But one night things were different. The man didn't come, nor the next night, nor the next. The seat by the window, the one he always chose, stayed empty. The untouched coffee grew cold. She began to worry. Days turned into weeks, and her heart grew heavier with every sunset. Then one rainy evening the door opened, but it wasn't him. It was the little girl, drenched and shivering, clutching a folded piece of paper. The barista rushed to her, wrapped her in her scarf, and asked softly, "Sweetheart, where's your daddy?" Tears welled up in the little girl's eyes as she whispered, "Daddy's in the hospital. He told me to give you this." Her hands trembled as she opened the note. It read, "If you're reading this, it means I couldn't make it tonight. Thank you for giving my daughter a reason to smile again. You gave me peace when I'd forgotten what it felt like. If life gives me another chance, I'll come for coffee again." The man who just came for coffee. Her tears fell onto the paper as she hugged the little girl tightly. "Don't worry," she whispered. "We'll go see him together." The scene cuts to the hospital. Machines beeping, rain outside the window. The barista enters the room quietly, holding 2 cups of coffee. He opens his eyes weakly and smiles when he sees her. "You still remembered my order," he whispered. "Every night," she said softly, placing the cup beside his bed. "Because you kept your promise." The little girl climbed onto his bed and hugged him tightly. "Daddy, she came!" For the first time, he cried, not from pain, but from relief. "You're both my reason to live," he murmured. As the night grew darker, the smell of coffee filled the hospital room, a reminder of where it all began, the place where a lonely CEO found warmth, and a single mom's kindness gave him a reason to fight again. The days in the hospital turned into weeks. The cafe girl visited every evening after work, bringing him his favorite coffee, not just because he loved it, but because it reminded them both of where everything began. The little girl, Emily, had grown attached to her. She'd sit beside her father's bed, drawing pictures of all 3 of them together. "Daddy, you and me," she'd say proudly. But his health wasn't getting better. The doctors spoke in whispers. The light in his eyes grew dimmer every day. One night, as the rain poured outside and thunder echoed softly, he asked her to sit closer. "You know," he said weakly, "for years I had everything. Cars, money, respect, but no peace. Every night I came to your café to remember what being human felt like. You didn't see my title, my fame, or my loneliness. You just smiled." Tears filled her eyes. "Don't talk like that," she said softly, holding his hand. "You're going to be fine." He smiled faintly. "If I don't wake up tomorrow, promise me one thing. Take care of her. Don't let my little girl forget how it feels to be loved." She broke down, shaking her head. "Don't say goodbye." "Please don't." He squeezed her hand gently. "You gave me something no money could buy, kindness. And maybe that's what saved my soul." Emily, half asleep on his arm, whispered, "Daddy, are we going to the cafe again?" He looked at her, tears glistening in his eyes. "Always, my love. Every night in your dreams." The monitor beeped slowly, then silence. The barista clung to the little girl, sobbing into her hair, whispering again and again, "You're not alone. I'm here. I'll keep my promise." Weeks later, the cafe reopened after a short break. In the corner by the window, his seat, a picture frame stood quietly beside, a cup of coffee and a single white flower. Emily sat there smiling as she colored her drawings while the barista worked behind the counter, keeping her promise every single day. Whenever a customer asked, "Who's the man in the photo?" she would smile softly and reply, "He was someone who came every night just for coffee and left us with love." The story didn't end with loss. It began with love that never faded, because sometimes even goodbye can plant the seeds of a new beginning. Welcome, friends. Tonight, we bring you the final and most emotional chapter of He Came Every Night. Just for coffee, she had no idea. He was the lonely CEO, millionaire single dad. This is not just an ending. It's a new beginning born from love, loss, and the power of kindness. It had been 1 year since that unforgettable night. The night the lonely CEO took his final breath, holding the hands of the 2 people who meant the most to him. The cafe had changed, yet everything inside carried his memory. His picture still hung near the window, his favorite seat still untouched, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee still filled the air every evening at 8 p.m., the time he used to arrive. The woman, the same barista who once served him without knowing who he really was, now owned the cafe. She had renamed it the Soul Cafe, inspired by the letter he left behind. Kindness has a soul, and you are that soul. Emily, his little daughter, had grown into a bright, cheerful girl who now helped her auntie serve coffee after school. Every night before closing, she would carry 2 cups of coffee to that corner table, one for her and one for her dad. "Daddy, I brought your favorite," she'd whisper softly, smiling at his photo. One evening, as golden light streamed through the windows, a group of businessmen entered. One of them looked at the photo on the wall and froze. "Isn't that Mr. Adrian Cole, the CEO who donated millions to single mothers before he passed?" The barista nodded gently. "Yes, he used to come here every night just for coffee." The man smiled faintly, his voice trembling. He used to say there was someone who reminded him what kindness felt like. She blinked away her tears and smiled. "He reminded me too, that one smile, one moment of care can heal a broken soul." Later that night, when the shop grew quiet, Emily sat at the piano in the corner, a gift from her father's company. She began to play the soft melody her dad used to hum. The cafe filled with warmth, with love, with memories that time could never erase. The barista watched her and whispered to herself, "You did it, Adrian. She's happy, just like you wanted." She poured herself a cup of coffee and sat in his seat. The wind outside whispered through the door chime, and for a fleeting moment, she swore she could feel him there, smiling. Sometimes love doesn't end with goodbye. Sometimes it lives on, in every cup of coffee, every act of kindness, and every heartbeat that remembers. If this story touched your soul, friends, please like, comment, share, and subscribe, because somewhere, someone still needs to hear that love never truly dies. You're watching Soul of Kindness, where every story proves that a single act of compassion can change a life forever.